Okay, it's now a couple of minutes after 12 p.m, so we're going to kick things off now. So good afternoon, everybody. Greg Evans is my name, and I'm the Managing Director of The Knight. I'd like to welcome you all to today's committee training webinar. We would like to respectfully acknowledge the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation and the traditional custodians of the land throughout Australia. We recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture, and pay our respects to their elders past and present. For those who haven't joined one of our committee training webinars before, this series is designed to equip committee members with the knowledge and skills needed to perform their duties and support functional, harmonious communities. Today's session is all about governance, and we'll run through some best practice tips and advice to help you as committee members how to run an effective owners corporation. A few small housekeeping items before we get started today. Your microphones and cameras have been disabled. There is the ability to ask questions via the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. Our team are in the chat to help with your questions, and we'll have some time for answering questions live at the end of the presentation. This webinar is in fact being recorded, and you will receive a copy of the recording and the slides after the event concludes. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Georgia Anderson. Georgia has over 7 years of experience in the world of strata, having spent time as an assistant and an office manager before joining the Knight as an owners corporation manager. She is experienced with a variety of property types and active in attending training and seminars to stay on top of an ever-evolving industry. Georgia is going to run through the main part of our presentation today, and I'll be jumping back in to assist with some of the live questions and answers afterwards. Over to you, Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregor. As Gregor said, today we'll be going through how to run an effective owners corporation. And to begin with, we'll be going through relationships. Now, many owners corporations will look very different and they are not all the same. What works for one owners corporation in building relationships and across the board may not work for another. One of the best ways to ensure an owners corporation operates efficiently is to ensure that there are good relationships within your owners corporation. That could be other committee members, it could be the owners corporation manager, and if there is a building manager at your property, then also them. They all work together to resolve issues within the owners corporation, and we all have very different roles. As a team, we all worked for the good of the owners corporation, and it's important that that is the main focus when trying to build relationships. One of the best ways to ensure efficiency is to be prepared before the AGM. Now, the Act stipulates that the length of time between each AGM is 15 months. We recommend that the AGM is held within 3 months of the end of financial year, and this will allow enough time to have passed of the end of financial year so that the budget can be set for the new financial year. We like to ensure that we are well prepared for the annual general meeting ahead of time. We like to meet with committees before the AGM to discuss any financials and approve the budget to be put forward. We do prefer to approve that budget going into the meeting. That way we are going in with the committee oversight and there is a clear recommendation to the owners at the meeting. One of the big contentious issues is if there is going to be a levy increase. We should work together and be prepared to be able to justify it. We need to make sure that we have answers for any owners that may come to the Knight on why decisions were made throughout the year, especially if there's been big works such as cladding or major works. With the agenda, we want to make sure that it should have all items that we need to discuss at the meeting. This may include any quotes or reports that we want to present to owners. And we want to make sure that we are doing this in a way to maximise the efficiency and effectiveness of the meeting and the decision making that's going to occur. A committee report is a good way to ensure that owners who are not heavily involved in the day-to-day activities of an owners corporation are aware of what's happened. It is required under the Owners Corporation Act for that committee to provide a report of the activities and any subcommittee activities as well. Now, while the Act doesn't provide any further guidance on this or what it should include or contain, it generally does come from the chairperson. The chairperson will write a written report and it will be included in the agenda, and it will give owners time to read through the meeting before the meeting and raise any queries or questions. The chairperson at the meeting can then give a verbal summary of what's occurred with any highlights and be able to then answer any questions. A committee report is a very good way, as I said, for the committee to communicate with other owners on what's going on. Now, it doesn't just have to focus on any maintenance or administration. There can be positives within that. It can be used for any building activities, sustainable initiatives, any cost-saving measures that the committee has completed. And we can also include details as how often the committee has met, so the owners, like I said, that aren't involved have an idea of how much work goes into the committee. It's also good practice for the chairperson to thank his committee members and acknowledge that they do work as volunteers for the good of the OC. Now, while there isn't a formal report, the Knight has prepared a template that can be provided to committee members should they wish to use one, and an example is on the screen. So it will include the names of the committee members, a list of achievements since the last AGM, any current large activities that the committee are undertaking, and any future planned activities that are relevant for the owners to know. And again, just a thanks to all other members and support throughout the year. How do we run an effective AGM as a team? So the role of a chairperson is crucial. That chairperson will keep the meeting on track and will ensure that the meeting is running on time. We do send the agendas out well ahead of the meeting, and we want to make sure that we follow that. It is important that it's followed to make sure that the meeting runs efficiently. If you as a chairperson are chairing the meeting and an owner interrupts something that is off topic, it is the role of the chairperson to make sure that we bring that under the relevant item. Most often it will be under general business and it will be deferred to that moment. The chair should guide the conversation at each annual general meeting. We all know that at times owners can speak at length without adding to the conversation, and that detracts from the resolution that is trying to be made. A good chair will be able to tell when the discussion is no longer adding value, and this is the time that should be called for a vote or to move the conversation on. We all know that long meetings can be exhausting and tiring and can be expensive when paying for the manager's time. This is why it's best to run them as efficiently as possible. It's important to note that this is the main meeting for the Owners Corporation. At the start of the meeting, we encourage that the chair of the meeting should read the rules of the meeting to the room. We ensure that these are followed throughout the meeting. This way, if the rules are broken, the chair should bring it to the attention of the individual and note that these rules were agreed to and read out at the start of the meeting. In repeated or extreme situations, the chair may choose and has the right to close the meeting and reconvene at another date if we are not coming to an agreement on how to handle the situation. The meeting rules are included in every agenda that the Knight prepares in the explanatory notes, which again is agreed to by all members in attendance. So there are rules where there are standard meeting rules. So we will commence at the appointed time, mobile phones to be switched to silent, and rules of debate. If we're having a meeting that is online, such as Zoom, there are other certain rules that are recommended, such as staying on mute, putting your hand up, and other items. Proxies are an important document for AGMs. An owner who's not able to attend the meeting can authorise another person to vote on their behalf. It needs to be by the prescribed proxy form, which can be found in the Knight's agenda when sent out and can also be found online. We need to make sure that proxies are sent in at least 3 days before that meeting. This way, the Knight is prepared and can ensure that all items are covered off appropriately. It can be difficult for our managers to calculate votes where large numbers of proxies are provided at last minute, such as at the meeting itself. As an owner, You are able to appoint your manager as your proxy, but we need to make sure that on the form, you're specifying how you would like for us as your managers to vote. We will abstain from all votes otherwise. There are limits outlined in the Owners Corporation Act since December on proxies. If there are 20 or less occupiable lots, a person can't act as a proxy on behalf of more than one other lot owner. If there are more than 20 lots, a person can't act on behalf of more than 5% of the lots. However, it does not apply to family members. If you have already appointed an existing proxy, you cannot appoint someone else to act as their proxy, such as if you have appointed an external person to act on your behalf for a period of 12 months, you cannot appoint someone else to then act as their proxy. A committee member can only proxy for other committee members to represent them on the committee within the committee meetings. Now, we've discussed how to work efficiently at meetings, but what about within the committee? The default maximum number of committee members is 7. It can be increased to 12 by ordinary resolution at the meeting when electing members. However, we do recommend that we sort of keep this to a 7 maximum to aid decision making. We also like when it's an odd number. If you have more members wanting to join the committee, we can encourage them to join as subcommittees instead. It is worthwhile highlighting that committee members are expected to contribute throughout the year. It is very difficult for a manager and a committee to work together to make decisions when members are elected that don't respond or turn up or vote. If a committee member is absent from your meetings for 25%, within any period of 6 months, other committee members may resolve to remove them at a meeting. If there are too many owners wanting to join the committee at an AGM, a ballot is typically held. We would allow each owner wishing to join around 3 minutes to make their case as to why they should be elected onto the committee. The manager will then distribute the voting forms, and if there are a lot of candidates, it may be that we can do this after the meeting. We do also encourage a variety of skills when appointing committee members, and that way there are different strengths and abilities within the committee. Now that we've elected a committee, how do we run effective meetings? We want to ensure that there will be a quorum before you hold the meeting. That way, decisions can be made and will take effect immediately. If there is no quorum, the decisions will be interim, similar to an annual general meeting, and will not take effect until they are confirmed at the next meeting by ballot or in accordance with the rules. The chairperson of the meeting will play an important role in keeping the meeting on track to ensure the agenda is followed and discussions are limited. It is best if the committee meetings don't go over 1.5 hours. Similar to an AGM, long drawn out meetings can be tiring. If your committee meetings are regularly going over time, you may wish to consider holding discussions outside of the meeting so the focus of that meeting can be decision making. It's important to note that as a committee member, you also are required to be financial at your meetings. Non-financial members are suspended from the committee, so it's important to make sure that you're paying your fees on time. The purpose of the minutes and the meetings is not to record every discussion point, but instead just the resolutions. The minutes will clearly identify the next steps, and some committee minutes specifically note who will action the item and for which member is responsible for what. The number of committee meetings can depend on the Owners Corporation, and it is up to the committee to decide how often they meet. Subcommittees. Breaking people into smaller groups is often a more effective way to get things done, especially with larger committees. The best practice is that subcommittees will meet and discuss items separate to the main meeting and then report back to the larger group with the most relevant information. For example, you may elect a financial subcommittee. Their responsibilities may meet to discuss the budget to be put forward at the annual general meeting. Once that subcommittee has met and made a decision, they would then put that recommendation back to the committee at the main committee meeting. We do have a terms of reference for the following subcommittees: financial and governance, sustainability, maintenance and defects, communication and social. Again, what works for one Owners Corporation may not work for all of them. Now, we discussed building managers at the start. So how do we work efficiently with them to ensure that we're all working together as a team? A committee may make a decision to put forward a procurement policy. It will help in improving the speed of decision making, and it is very common for building managers to be provided an authorised spending limits. The Knight has a template which can be provided if you wish. And again, it can be changed to suit your community. What works for one doesn't always work for all. The policy can allow authorisation limits for spending for the chair and the building manager. This way, decisions can be made quickly and effectively without having to go to and from with all committee members and the manager. This can also include any invoice approval limits if you're allowing your building manager to be that point of contact for invoice approvals. So we've discussed a lot of information, but as a committee, what can we actually do? The committee is empowered to make ordinary resolutions on behalf of the owners corporation. They are limited and cannot make special or unanimous resolutions. That requires all. Examples of items that do require special or unanimous resolutions would be items such as changing the plan of subdivision, obtaining a loan that exceeds the current annual fees, making or amending the rules, and raising a levy that is more than twice the annual fees for your owners corporation. We do have a list, so please get in touch with us and we will be able to work with you as a committee to develop a guide that suits your owners corporation. Conflict of interest. As a committee, it is important that committee members must not make improper use of the member's position to gain directly or indirectly an advantage for the member for any other person. This might be something such as if an agenda item relates specific to their lot, they should advise that there is a conflict of interest, especially if it solely benefits their lot, and they should take themselves away from that conversation. Best practice is for that committee member to abstain. We can work together to create a declaration of conflict of interest as an agenda item at the start of each meeting, and that can be specific to your committee. As a committee, it is quite often that you may not be able to get everyone to agree to the same thing. So resolutions are voted on in committee meetings, so it does require a final decision. If the vote is tied, it is important to note that the chairperson will have a casting vote. We recommend adopting a code of conduct, which we'll show you an example of soon, that is specific to your committee about how to proceed. This will ensure that all members are on the same page about how they should behave within the meeting and outside. As I said, we have a standard document which can be adjusted to suit your property. And if there is a lot of strong disagreement within your committee, you can consider getting an external mediator or taking it to settle in VCAT. There is the example of the code of conduct, which has multiple items which can assist in making sure that we're running an effective committee of management and everyone is aware of what is and isn't relevant within the code. Now, we've said that communication is a big thing and working together as a team is incredibly important. So, how do we do this? Working as a team with your manager, we not only support you as a committee, but also communicate with all other owners, tenants, property managers, contractors, and more each day. So it's important to know that we do experience a high volume of calls and emails, and we need to make sure that we are prioritizing the most important. So how do we work together to ensure that you're receiving the best service from us as your owners corporation manager? We like to make sure that we're seeing the most important things. So if you can avoid CCing your manager in community discussions and backwards and forwards emails between all members, that would be best to ensure that we're only seeing what is relevant. As a committee, you can consider alternative platforms such as WhatsApp, Facebook, other online platforms for hosting these discussions. That way you can spend time going between all members, making sure that all members are heard, and then you would email your manager with the resolution and instructions after that discussion has been held. Communicating with your community. Again, communication is a very big portion of ensuring that you're working together as a team, not just within the committee, but within your owners corporation. Communications from owners corporations can be quite dry and very routine and often boring, especially if we're limiting them to just levy notices and AGM notices. There are a few different ways that we can spread positive messages within your community, and we can work together to implement different processes. Some examples may be putting forward a community newsletter, which can be an item for a subcommittee. Electronic notice boards throughout the property, physical notice boards, and WhatsApp community groups are all wonderful ways to spread messages within the community. You can also do feedback surveys. This allows owners and tenants to feel heard and have the ability to put forward any items outside of an AGM that they feel they would like to have an answer on. All right. That was a lot of information, and I'm sure there are a lot of questions. So I will hand over to Gregor to see if any interesting ones came through.
Thank you, Georgia, and very well done there. So let's have a look at the Q&A. So we've had a few questions come through. Let's just go over a couple of those right now. So we've had a couple from Tim. So one of the questions being that ROC committee uses the Knight as their owners corporation managers. The current owners corporation chairperson pushed to use the Knight but doesn't want the owners corporation manager to attend meetings and seems to be active in excluding the OC manager from decision-making emails and any meetings, including annual general meetings. Is this reasonable practice? And the response provided to Tim is that the involvement of the owners corporation manager differs between committees. Many committees invite the owners corporation manager to be involved in meetings and provide advice on owners corporation matters so that committee members can be informed and make informed decisions. However, there are a number of committees that will not immerse the owners corporation manager in the running of the owners corporation, and they see the role of the OC manager being more of a secretary, so the person convening meetings and sending out correspondence, etc. But I guess the point there is that ultimately it is up to the committee how they wish to utilise the owners corporation manager. We at the Knight see ourselves as providing good advice and direction to owners corporation committees. We're not just the secretary. We're here to provide that insight and help committees with the decisions that they have to make. We obviously understand that the role of a committee member is a voluntary role, and typically speaking, committee members don't understand or don't have the, I guess, wherewithal in terms of the Owners Corporations Act compared to the managers that we employ. So certainly, I guess, words of encouragement to utilise the Owners Corporation Manager where required, and certainly managers can attend meetings as required. It does cost a little bit more money to attend meetings after hours, but ultimately you can save an Owners Corporation money in the long term by providing the right information at the outset. Another question that came through is if I was to appoint the Owners Corporation Manager as a proxy, does that mean the manager must attend a meeting? And the answer there is that if a proxy is appointed, there is no requirement for that proxy holder to attend a meeting. If the Owners Corporation Committee wishes for the Owners Corporation Manager to attend a meeting, certainly the majority of the committee members needs to agree to that. Alrighty, and let me just have a quick look at some other questions coming through. Just one moment.
There's been a good one, Gregor.
Sure.
Do we pay extra to have the Knight as Owners Corporation Manager chair the meeting, or is that part of the service?
Sure, thanks, Georgia. So the expectation would be that if the Owners Corporation Manager does attend the meeting, then we can certainly take on the mantle as chairperson for the meeting. We do a lot of training in-house of our staff, and the running of meetings is a topic that we train our staff on, and we do encourage them to chair meetings where required. With that being said, it's certainly up to the meeting or the committee themselves as to who they wish to chair the meeting. it may in fact be that the chairperson of the owners corporation attends to that themselves.
There was another one from Tim. If the chair and the OC have an expenditure limit that doesn't need authorisation by the committee, are they obliged to advise the committee of the expenditure?
Okay, so sometimes the committee will agree on a limit of, I guess, a threshold in terms of how much a chairperson or the owners corporation manager can spend on behalf of the owners corporation. If that has in fact been agreed to, then the authority is given to the manager or the chairperson to make those decisions and make, I guess, decisions when it comes to expenditure. It is prudent, however, that well, my recommendation, my belief is that it is prudent that the chairperson and the owners corporation manager report back to the committee in terms of what has been expended. Now, it will be reported at every AGM in terms of the financial statements, what has been spent on behalf of the owners corporation, but a committee may agree that more frequently a report is made advising how much has been spent by each of those parties.
There was a good question from Peter in regards to heritage buildings with new builds. Is it a practice of having two owners corporations, OC1 and OC2, that may happen if the older building takes most of the funds for maintenance?
Okay, when it comes to new buildings, or any property for that matter, the land surveyor will, prior to the establishment of a property, they will dictate how many owners corporations there will be for the property. The reason for there being multiple owners corporations is that there may be areas of the property that benefit some but not all of the lot owners, and therefore by having a limited owners corporation can make it more, I guess, fairer for owners in terms of costs and ongoing maintenance of those areas, and also it can restrict access from certain people to those areas that don't normally access those either. So going back to the question in terms of a heritage property that has ongoing heritage requirements in terms of maintenance, it will really come down to what common property there is shown on the plan of subdivision or the strata plan. And if the majority of the heritage infrastructure is located on common property number 1, then the majority of maintenance costs would be attributed to owners corporation 1. However, with that being said, there might be common property 2, 3, or common property 4 for limited owners corporations. And if that's the case, then there may be some portion of costs that need to be allocated to each of those limited owners corporations as well.
Wonderful. And just a question on what templates does the Knight have? Does the Knight have other useful templates? For example, a risk register template listing common risks apartment OCs might face?
In terms of that template, I don't believe we have a registered template at this point in time. I guess as owners corporation managers, we're not, well, we certainly have an idea in terms of the risks that arise in owners corporations, but there are specialised organisations that owners corporations engage to come into a property to identify a risk when it comes to the building itself, such as OH&S and fire services and evacuation requirements, that type of thing. Specifically when it comes to owners corporation compliance obligations, certainly something we can take on notice and look to prepare a document that basically identifies the risks when it comes to those compliance obligations as per the Owners Corporations Act, and potentially it could be a bit of a checklist for an owners corporation that the manager ticks off just to ensure that the committee is following all the requirements. Thank you for that question, by the way. Very good.
Another good question was, do subcommittees need to be elected at the annual general meeting?
So there is a requirement at the annual general meeting to elect a committee of management. When it comes to subcommittees or working groups, which probably the more informal term for a subcommittee, no, not at the Owners Corporation AGM. The subcommittee, my understanding, can be formed at any point throughout the year by the main committee itself. Now, if a subcommittee has been established, then there are some requirements that they must follow as well. And therefore, I guess, going back to my first point about the working groups, there are less requirements of a working group compared to a subcommittee. So if a committee is exploring the formation of subcommittees, just be wary of those additional requirements as well.
There was one more. Is it common practice for owners corporations to be advised of the correspondence sent to it but received by the manager? If not, why?
Is it common practice for owners corporations to be advised of the correspondence sent to it but received by the manager? If not, why? I guess it comes down to the formality of the correspondence. If the correspondence is directed to the committee of management, then typically that should be passed on, or it should be passed on by the owners corporation manager. If there's correspondence to the manager that relates to the management of the property and the manager is able to deal with that correspondence, then at times it may not be passed on, but certainly if that's what the committee is after, then our managers can make it an item on the agenda to table any correspondence received from members that is not directly addressed to the committee of management.
How does the committee access the owners corporation records for management to see how the property is being managed?
Certainly. So the night we actually have an online portal where we do upload pertinent documentation for owners corporations, and there are two sections to that portal. We've got a section for all lot owners, and then there's a section for the committee of management where particular committee documents can be uploaded, but also the financial statements of the owners corporation can be viewed, and that's live financial data, so full transparency in that regard. However, not all documentation is uploaded to that portal, and as per the Owners Corporations Act, any lot owner, including committee members, can inspect the records of the owners corporation at a reasonable time, if reasonable notice is provided to us as the owners corporation manager. With that being said, if the committee is wanting some further documentation to be provided, typically we'll just send that documentation through to the committee if it's not chapter and verse in terms of the content of that information.
Another one on subcommittees. Does the whole owners corporation need to agree on who is invited to join the subcommittee?
I don't believe so. My opinion is that the committee of management themselves can facilitate the process of formalising the subcommittees. And it doesn't necessarily have to be committee members who are on the subcommittees. They can actually reach out and widen the net to owners corporation members, but also potentially non-members of the owners corporation could be members of the subcommittee as well. Let me just double check that. So the Owners Corporations Act talks about subcommittees under section 116. And just to confirm my comments there, so the committee may appoint subcommittees in accordance with the rules. The rules may provide for the role and functions of a subcommittee. A quorum for a meeting of a subcommittee is at least half the members of the subcommittee. And then there's other requirements there that specify that other sections of the Owners Corporations Act relate to the operations of the subcommittee as well.
A good question was, how long can I stay on the committee for?
That's a good question. And there is no maximum or minimum term for an Owners Corporation member. So a member could be on the committee for as long as they want. However, with that being said, there is the mechanism for committee members to be voted off, and that is at a general meeting of the Owners Corporation. So it doesn't have to be an annual general meeting. It could be a special general meeting where an Owners Corporation can remove committee members. But there have been, I guess, requests from government that they mandate when it comes to the tenure of committee members, but certainly nothing has been put forward into the legislation at this point in time. So as long as you want, Georgia.
I think that was it for all of the questions.
No more questions?
Actually, there was maybe a good one. Can a committee member be excluded from voting just because it's affecting their lot with the conflict of interest?
Interesting question. So, look, it comes down to the nature of the issue, and it is very subjective at times. I understand that, but typically, if an individual lot owner is going to gain solely, specifically from a decision, then my advice to any committee is to ask that person to abstain from the vote because of that conflict of interest. There might be times where decisions are made that benefit a number of persons within an owners corporation, but not all, and therefore I guess the committee in that regard has to make a judgment call as to whether that person is conflicted in that regard. It is a very delicate issue at times, but certainly let's say that a lot owner has requested that some works are undertaken to their lot, they should be excused from the vote. In terms of the talking to that topic, I believe they should be given the ability to speak to it. However, when it comes to the vote, they should be excused.
And I think one final question was, is the chair of the meeting usually the OC manager or the chair of the committee, or does it depend?
It certainly depends. There is the option to have the Owners Corporation chairperson be the chair of the AGM, but also if that person doesn't wish to chair the meeting, then you can look to turn to the Owners Corporation manager as well.
One more has come through. Do subcommittees need to have formal meetings with minutes, etc.?
Section 114 of the Owners Corporations Act talks about the requirements of a committee, and under section 116, which refers to subcommittees, it does stipulate that section 114 of the Act applies, which does mean that technically a subcommittee must take minutes. However, with that being said, a lot of subcommittees are probably not actually subcommittees, they're more working groups, and therefore the requirement to have minutes for a working group is not there. So you just need to understand, if you want a formal subcommittee, that there are requirements that need to be followed versus an informal group, such as a working group, where a recommendation can be made back to the committee rather than a decision being made on behalf of the committee themselves.
And there was just a query on confirming in regards to abstaining. When you mean benefit, is that a financial benefit or intrinsic benefit?
It could be either. It could be financial or intrinsic. So yes, as I said before, it can be quite subjective at times, unfortunately. So you just, as a committee, you need to actually address the potential conflict of interest and seek consensus from the committee as to whether you believe the person is conflicted. And look, to be prudent, I'd suggest that if there's any doubt, to be conservative and just ask that person to abstain from the vote.
Must all subcommittee decisions be ratified by the whole OC?
When it comes to voting, so there's the ability for a committee to delegate authority to others. So let me just quickly glance at the Owners Corporations Act here, and just give me one moment. But let's see, delegations by committee. So section 102 of the OC Act talks about a committee may by instrument delegate any of its powers and functions to the manager or a lot owner. And a committee may by instrument subdelegate a power or function delegated to the committee to a member of the committee. So I guess under that section, a power could be delegated to those lot owners or committee members on the subcommittee to make a decision on behalf of the committee as a collective. Alternatively, if that decision hasn't been, if there is no delegation to the subcommittee, then the subcommittee should be referring back to the committee and the committee makes the decision as a collective.
And that was all of the questions.
Fantastic. Very good. All righty. Well, just in terms of today, thank you very much, Georgia, again for your fantastic presentation. And thank you everybody for tuning in today and for sharing your questions and comments with us. If there's any part of today's presentation you wish to revisit, please keep an eye out for your inbox for the recording of the session. And feel free to share it with any committee members who couldn't join us today, or for anybody who you think might benefit from the content. And as always, our events inbox is open. So we have an email address for our events team, which is events@theknight.com.au. So if you have any feedback or topic suggestions to help us provide the most insightful, helpful webinars for you, we certainly encourage you to send those that feedback to the email address. And our next event of the night is our annual information evening, an evening with the night, and ticket information will be released in the coming weeks, and we hope to see you there. So finalising today's webinar, wishing you a great afternoon ahead, and thank you very much again for watching today. Thank you.